my name is Milli, and I'm the host for Unityfy, which is a platform which empowers and inspires people from all walks of life. I also have the beautiful Azka as well, which is also a host for Unityfy. So today we have a gentleman named Vince on our show today, who has harm and addiction of alcohol back in the 90s. Now, he actually went to a monastery in Thailand, which he actually made a vow and he never turned back. So he's now set up an organisation named Ghost Retreat, who helps others with all types of addiction. And Vince.
Millie, your voice is going up and down, you know.
How are you, Vince?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
You're welcome.
We're very pleased to have you on the show. So, Vince, in regards to that little summary that I mentioned, so if you can just talk about, how everything was within your life, first of all, prior to your recovery. So while you were going through your addiction and also after, through the stages of you going through recovery, I mean, how did you cross all the hurdles in your life and how did you maintain them?
All right. Millie, can you speak up a bit? Can you turn your microphone up just a touch, Millie?
Yeah, Millie, repeat that question again,
Yeah,
darling.
you need to speak. Can you turn your microphone up just a little bit?
Okay. So basically, as I was saying, so Vince, if you could please let us all listeners know in regards to the walk of life that you had prior to your recovery and what you went through and what hurdles and obstacles that you had to come across to go into your recovery and how you maintained it.
Okay. I normally start by saying that, for most of my adult life, certainly for 25 years of it, I was an alcoholic. And I start at my kitchen in Newbury in Berkshire 24 years ago when I poured my last glass of lager and made a promise to myself that would be my last glass of lager. I would never drink again. And I made a conscious intention not that I wouldn't switch addictions, so I wouldn't switch to something else. But where that all started, that started 25 years earlier, I imagine, around the age of 13, and I'd been drinking at home and at parties prior to the age of 13, but at 13 I remember quite clearly going to the King's Head pub in Romford in Essex for a Desmond Dekker concert.
Right.
And ordering half a pint of bitter. And that was the start of my sort of professional drinking career, as it were, out of the home drinking career. That was when I was 13, drinking regularly in pubs at 14. I can recall studying, and I use that word very loosely in inverted commas, studying for my O-levels on an evening, and then going down the pub after revision and study and having a few drinks when the pub was closed. And you can sort of get the picture of where this is going. It just alcohol became more and more a part of my life. I was actually born in Ireland to Irish parents. Weekend of drinking and you can't remember it, then it must have been a good weekend, which is a rather strange way of looking at things. But that's how I would look at things. The more I drank, the better it was. And while I was single, I was only impacting myself. But once I got married, then I was impacting my wife at that time and eventually my children. So for those 25 years of drinking, my life went up and down. Sometimes my life was okay. Sometimes it wasn't so okay. But I managed. I was I managed my drinking very, very well. I managed to keep the job down for the same job for 30 years plus. So I was a high-functioning alcoholic, although at the time, and even for 5 years after I stopped drinking, I couldn't use the word alcoholic. The word carried so much guilt and shame, I could not use the word.
I was just going to ask you, Vince, I mean, during that period when you were an alcoholic, what kind of things or incidents that took place in your life, either through you or affected your family, friends? Is there anything that you could tell us that actually really stuck out and made you start thinking, you know what, I've got to stop this at some point in my life?
That took an awful long time, because I considered it normal. It was what it's what my mother and father did. My dad was an alcoholic. A lot of direct relatives were alcoholics. If I came home to Ireland for a holiday, I'd spend that holiday with different relatives in different pubs in different states of inebriation. As I said, I managed to get through those years fine. I think the fact that I was a shift worker for a good 30 plus years, that helped me. That I could go drinking at night. I could I would go down to Smithfield Market at 5 o'clock in the morning.
But you weren't abusive in any way that way, were you?
Sorry?
There was no abuse involved, was there? Were you physical? Because when you become alcoholic, some people become so physical.
No, occasional, bouts of potential blood, alcohol poisoning and very bad hangovers. Occasional, collapsing in the gutter.
Okay.
But they were occasional. They weren't the norm. In general, I was highly functioning. I would drink before work. I would drink during work. I would drink after work. It was what I did.
Can I just ask something as well, Vince? How did you find that? Did you find that it impacted you mentally? Did you find that you had obstacles in regards to your mental ability and your mental self-help? How did you feel within yourself while you were going through that?
Well, I would have justified my drinking in that it made me think clearer. It made me more settled. But of course, now being sober, I can see why it does that. Because I was so agitated about when I would have my next drink. While the agitation was present, no, I couldn't think straight, and I was, not settled. But as soon as I, went on a coffee break and had a couple of pints of lager and came back to work, then I'd settled down a little bit. But of course, the inebriation had started to settle in. When I left school at 16, and I didn't bother staying for A levels. And during my first week at work, at a shipping company in Leadenhall Street in London, City of London, there was an alcohol quiz in one of the women's magazines, 10 questions or so, and if you answered yes to 2 or 3 questions, you definitely had a problem with drinking. And at 17, I answered yes to about 5 questions out of 10. But that didn't stop me for the next 20 odd years.
Do you think you had the feeling of being in denial? Because I know that a lot of addicts, no matter what type of addiction you have, they have a feeling of being in denial that they are actually an addict, and they just think it's a part of normality within to do what they're doing.
That's right. It's the delusional side of it. I saw it as quite normal.
Yeah.
You didn't drink as being abnormal. How could you possibly survive in this world without taking drink or drugs? How could you get through Monday to Thursday, or in my case, 7 days a week, or until my next set of night shifts had finished? But how could you cope with life unless you had this crutch to fall back on, unless you had this reward, in quotes, to fall back on? And so I really saw it as a natural right. It was my right to go drinking. If I was providing for my family, although technically I wasn't, but in all the effort I was putting into going to work, and in fact I was getting deeper and deeper into debt. I was deserving of a drink at the end of the day. Or in my case, or they started.
how did that impact around your family, Vince? Like, what impact did it have with your drinking?
So I got married at the age of 29. So I think my wife, she understood. She was obviously aware of my drinking. In fact, my wife was a barmaid when I met her. So, but after a couple of years and our first child, she obviously realised that I had a serious problem, a problem that I would not acknowledge, I wouldn't even entertain. And in many ways, my drinking would leave us short of money, but therefore leave her short of money. And she coped as best she could with me. We had a second child, and I thought I was being a good husband, a good father, but I only had my own upbringing to compare that to. I thought I was giving more than I ever got. Because my dad was an alcoholic, but he had a family history. He was the sixth child in a Catholic family. He wasn't wanted. He wasn't allowed to go on family holidays. Quite clearly, he'd never been hugged or kissed or loved, and he didn't know how to relate to children. He didn't know how to love himself, let alone love anyone else. And my mother came from a very large Catholic family in the south of Ireland, again with a history of alcoholism and abuse. She didn't know how to love or love herself or love her children. So when I related to my wife, who I wasn't treating as badly as my father treated my mother, and when I was affectionate towards my children, but now I'd say, well, it wasn't enough. But at the time, I thought, well, that's far more than I ever got.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's a Philip Larkin poem, and I often quote it. And now I wouldn't normally swear. I'm only swearing because this is part of the poem. But the poem goes, "They fucked you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with all the faults they had, and they add some extra just for you. But they were fucked up in their turn by men in old-style hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern and half at one another's throats. Man hands on misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can, and don't have any kids yourself."
Wow.
When I
Poem.
heard that poem, it just, any sense of wanting to blame people, to blame my parents, to blame their parents, just dropped away, because they're as much victims of their own childhood as what I am, what I was, and equally, my own two boys are hopefully quite healthy and fairly stable. Both of them have been in therapy themselves, and which I would thoroughly recommend. Just to come to terms with how things really are. So, during my 11 years of marriage and fatherhood before I stopped drinking, things were up and down, and they got better, they got worse. But by about year 9 of my marriage, as a trade union rep at work, I'd been called in to attend to a number of disciplinary hearings involving alcohol. And in one case, the company were very sympathetic and allowing the guy time off to go through a home detox and what have you, and supporting him when he went back to work. In fact, they did that for a second guy that ended up on disciplinary hearing for drinking. And then there was a third guy, another instance, a good friend of mine who, through a drinking incident at work, was dismissed summarily with no option for detox or support because of his supposedly management position. And I can recall going to a tribunal, employment tribunal, after he'd been sacked, and sitting with him and thinking to myself, well, to be fair, I drink more than the two guys that kept their jobs, and I drink more than this guy who's lost his job. I need to start looking at my own behaviour. So So that was sort of the twinkle that sort of, I need to start looking at this. This is a problem.
Yeah.
This isn't going to get better. And that was about 2 years before I finally stopped.
So can I just say, like, so that time when you decided, right, in your kitchen, and you had your last drink, and I know obviously we probably have listeners listening in tonight, and they might probably are going through what you went through, prior to your recovery. So can I just ask you, what is it that made you do that? What is it that was the type of, did you have an epiphany, or did you did it just, you just felt, do you know what, I think it's, going all, belly up around me, and it's not going, I'd like it? Or what is it that made you decide to, because initially you'd done a vow at home initially, right? And then you done another vow when you went to the monastery.
Yeah.
Right? But before you actually went to the monastery, you done a vow at home. So if you can just let us know, like, as I said, there's probably listeners that we have listening tonight, and they want to find that inspiration from, of where you got that energy from, of what made you, or just an insight of exactly what came about for you to make that decision.
Right, before you actually answer that beautiful question, and a long question from Millie, would you like to give out the number, please? Yeah,
so to our listeners, can I just make everything clear as well? This is only our personal opinion and views on experiences, and you're most welcome to join and call in. The number is 07944 431 366. That's 07944 431 366.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that there was any inspiration involved at all. It was desperation. Okay. So having started to come to wake up to reality, let's say that those union disciplinary cases were the first step in waking up to reality, that things were not going to get better for me. I did try some controlled drinking. That wasn't working. I saw my doctor, and she said to make a note of how much I was drinking. That didn't really stop me drinking to excess. My marriage was clearly not working, and was in serious danger of falling apart. And everyone's life, but my life is made up of causes and conditions. Things come together, and to at certain points in time, and then I choose where I want to go from that. And one of the things that happened at the time was I actually, for the first time in God knows how long it'd been, 15, 16 years at work, I actually had a verbal warning about my own drinking. And that was at the same time, causes and conditions coming into play, coming together. I'd actually just passed my driving test and started to drive. I bought a brand new car, and I found myself at work, in my lunch hour, drinking 6 pints, and then driving home a few hours later. And that in itself was what was worrying me. I was mindful of that. So all of these things come together. So by that time in October 1996, where it wasn't so much inspiration, it was desperation. I knew that I had to stop. There was no other option. The other options were I carried on as I was, and I would lose my marriage, I would lose my job, I would lose my home, and in time I would no doubt lose my life. So for me at that point, because of all those causes and conditions coming together, I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
It was taking that leap into the dark, stepping into the dark to see, what would happen. So I sat down. I took a can of lager out of the fridge, and my house was full of booze, wine and brandy and beer. But I took a single can out of the fridge, and I poured it slowly, and I just made a mental note to myself: this is my last drink ever. I don't know what's going to happen, because drinking was my life. People I knew in pubs were my family. I was giving my lifestyle and my friends and family, drinking friends and drinking family, I'd leaving them all behind. I was taking this leap into the dark, and for me, it was an act of desperation, not so much inspiration, because I knew I didn't have any other choice. But it was the reality. It was waking up to the realities. So, at last, stop denying the fact that I had a serious problem with alcohol. I still couldn't, I couldn't say, as I said earlier, I couldn't actually say the word alcoholic, for another 5 years.
Yeah.
It just carried guilt and shame. But of course, I can look back now, and that taking that vow, making myself that promise, taking that last drink, and that step into that leap into the dark wasn't actually a leap into the dark.
It's the light,
because I haven't looked back. My life is inconceivably different. At one point during my really serious, or during a serious drinking period, before I was in my mid-20s, I'd really thought I would drink myself to death before I was 30. I didn't expect to have a 30th birthday. So a couple of years ago, when it was my 60th birthday, I taught a one-day retreat in Ireland, just on waking up to this life and the fact that I've lived twice as long as what I had originally expected to. So, that it's a huge, it's a small shift in perspective has these huge benefits. Just changing that. No, I'm not going to drink anymore. And I've mentioned it to people before, but those first couple of years, 18 months to 2 years, were miserable. Well, they weren't miserable, but they weren't happy. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't accumulating any more debt. I wasn't getting into any more any sort of family conflict. But they weren't happy, and that's dangerous in terms of relapse. But I didn't get a lot of help from my GP or National Health Service at the time. They didn't really provide any help. I saw an alcohol counsellor for a couple of sessions, and they weren't particularly supportive. I don't think they had. If you don't experience the desperation of addiction, I don't know that you can relate to people.
Relate to them. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Now, having said that, what I'm really much interested is your Buddhism teaching. Now, how did that come about, and how did that help you get to the stage where you are today? Because you're actually teaching others now, aren't you?
I do, or at least I try to. It stems from that 2 years of misery because I couldn't get any help, and I tried AA meetings, but although I could see they had benefits, they didn't sit well with me. So I sought out a counsellor. So I entered I entered counselling, and a Gestalt counsellor in Reading, and one afternoon in his waiting room, I saw a poster on the wall, and the poster was about a charity in Reading, and I think the poster read "Breaking the Chains of Addiction," and this charity were taking heroin addicts from the UK to a monastery in Thailand for some sort of detox. And I remember looking at the poster and thinking, wow, if only I'd seen this a couple of years earlier, maybe that would have kick-started my recovery, and I'd be in a different place right now. Because I must sort of take a step back, and a large chunk of my 18 months in therapy, that early therapy, was to do with finding someone or something to blame for where I found myself, someone or something to blame for my addiction. And although the therapy really helped, but of course eventually I had to let go of there's no one to blame, and but anyway, so I saw this poster and it stuck in my head, and I didn't think anything more about it. And then a few months later, my wife was training to become a counsellor herself. One of her placements, study placements, was at a HIV drop-in centre. And many of the clients at the drop-in centre had contracted HIV through shared needles. They were heroin addicts. And one afternoon at this drop-in centre, a guy dropped in. He said, "Hi, my name's Mike. I run this charity in Reading, taking heroin addicts out to Thailand for detox." And he asked my wife whether she would be interested in being a trustee. And she said, "Well, actually, no, I've got 2 small children to bring up, and and a husband who works shifts, and I'm studying to be a counsellor. I can't take that on." But I mentioned it to my husband; he might be interested. And I got to meet Mike, and I went along to a trustee meeting of this charity. And maybe it's my trade union skills or not that came into play, but I left that first meeting as chairman of the charity. And I found myself chairman of a charity that took heroin addicts who I knew nothing about to Thailand, what I knew nothing about, for treatment in a Buddhist monastery that I knew nothing about, and a herbal treatment of that I knew nothing about. So I decided, if I'm going to do this properly, I better go and see what happens. So I paid for my own ticket and I travelled to Thailand, and it was a wondrous experience back in 1998. No cell phones. It was just a wonderful experience. I was totally in awe of the people I met and of the country, and particularly when I got to the monastery. I was so frightened. I didn't want to ask any questions, any real questions about what they were doing or what was Buddhism or what was Thailand like. I was just in total awe to see this herbal treatment that the patients go through, the detoxees go through. And it was at a particular meeting with the abbot, and through an interpreter. Let me take a step back.
Yeah.
Well, no, I suppose it was at that meeting, really. At that meeting, I asked the abbot, could he cure me of nicotine? Because I was still smoking at the time. I gave up to the booze, but the nicotine was a serious problem. And he smiled and he said, "Yep." He said, 1 25 centilitre glass of the herbal medicine, and I must take a vow, and I would be cured. And that what piqued my interest in the vow. And he explained that the herbal treatment at the monastery, it's very efficacious, it's very effective, it's very rapid, it's very real, but it's only 5% of what he considered to be their treatment. He said the other 95% of the treatment is the vow, is the promise. And that's when I thought back to, well, that's exactly what I did at my kitchen table. I had this vow. So really 95% of, recovery, I've done it. I realised up until that point, I'd been abstaining from drinking. I've been stopping myself doing something that I thought I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to drink. I thought that made my life better. I thought I was stopping myself. I was denying myself from something. But what came from that conversation with the abbot was, the vow is about abandoning your old lifestyle and creating a new lifestyle. Abandonment was leaving that old life behind altogether. So the difference between abstaining and abandoning is huge. That's where my freedom lie. And from that point on, I have no desire to go backwards. There's nothing for me to recover in an old life. I only have a new life to create on a moment-to-moment basis as I go forward. And at that meeting, when he said about one cup of medicine and one vow, I couldn't do it because I was so in awe and respectful of their viewpoint towards his vow that I wouldn't take that medicine, I wouldn't take that vow if I thought I was going to break it. So I didn't at that time. Although I did go back 2 years later with a crack addict from Reading. I accompanied a crack addict, and while he took a vow not to take crack and various other drugs, I took a vow not to take alcohol, drugs, or nicotine for the rest of my life. So I did it 2 years later, and I stopped smoking instantly.
Wow.
You see, Vince, I mean, I'm gathering just by listening to you that you have to be a strong person from within to take a vow and respect other cultures as well, because you were saying that, you know, when you went abroad and you took that vow and you decided, because you knew you had to take that vow, because then if you had to go back and face those people, it would not be something that you want to be doing, you see, with the guilt. So you're like, you're quite a strong man, you know.
Well, you see, I would go back and say that that original vow, my kitchen table in Newbury in Berkshire in October 1996, was an act of desperation, not an act of inspiration. But when I say that, you know, the light had started to dawn. I'd started to be honest with myself. I started to drop the self-deception. You know, life as I thought it wasn't working. So I had to accept that. Stop telling myself otherwise. And of course, you know, even now, 24 years sober, you know, I'm still waking up how things really are. You know, life is difficult, and it's made more difficult if I resist how things really are. So when I accepted the difference between abstaining and abandoning, to completely let my old life go, you know, that's where that shift from being tied to the past and being free to live you know, in the future really kicks in, if that makes any sense. So from my point of view, I didn't have a choice. My choice was life or death, and which is the choice of many addicts. You know, I've accompanied a few addicts out to Thailand for treatment. I've helped many hundreds, if not thousands more, to go via the website. And I communicated with lots of addicts, and it's a life or death situation. It's a life or death choice, and I've known lots of addicts who died. And nowadays, I recommend people that they don't travel because it's not a miracle cure. But if you really want it, I can't think of a better way to make that transition from addict to ex-addict, because it is a very real, very, very rapid detox. It is very public. You might have a busload of Belgian tourists taking your photo while you're doing it. It's very levelling. Everyone wears pink pajamas. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you're Thai or foreigner, you know, you still wear the same pink pajamas, and you still kneel down at the same, you know, gutter to vomit in as everyone else. But you know, as I've proven, you don't have to fly halfway around the world to vomit in the gutter to get clean, to get sober.
Yeah. So your journey in Thailand, your recovery part. So listening to you now, I have a sense that it's more to do with the mental mind, and I think as well, because like you look at it in, okay, so the example, addicts that are going through whatever addiction they are going through, now you have to be in a very clear, neutral environment to help bring that manifestation within yourself, to have a clearer mind, and for you to then focus on your addiction side and to help you to recover. So do you think because you were in Thailand and you were at the monastery that actually helped you because of the atmosphere and the environment, or do you think it's because of the strength that you had within yourself?
Well, certainly, you know, originally, as I say, for the first visit in 1998 and the second visit in 2000, and then I had a third visit in 2002, and then after that, I tended to go every year or twice a year or 3 times a year. But for those first few years, I was just highly respectful of the monastery and the monks and of the treatment they were offering, and I didn't really dip my toe into Buddhism at all. apart from in the sense that my wife bought me a couple of books to help me along, and one of the books was a very basic Buddhism 101, just listing out some of the main principles of Buddhism, and a little way into that book, it just listed what are known as the Buddha's precepts, 5 precepts, these suggestions, not to kill anyone, not to steal, to be sexually responsible, not to tell lies, and number 5 was not to take drugs or alcohol. And I thought, what a wonderful set of principles to live my life by. Here's a philosophy, or a religion, whichever way you call it. At the time I thought it was a religion, now I would say it's just a philosophy, a way of life. And there's this guy saying, well, don't go around killing people, they don't like it. Don't go around taking things that don't belong to you, you just cause trouble. Be sexually responsible and respectful, because that saves a lot of conflict. If you're going to talk, and tell the truth and say it kindly, and it's really, really a good idea not to take drugs and alcohol, because that leads to trouble and all the other 4 suggestions. So there's this philosophy telling me, actually supporting me, that says it's okay not to drink or take drugs. And I found that hugely supportive. Just the fact that this philosophy said that it's okay not to take drugs and alcohol. In fact, we recommend that you don't, so that you lead a happy life. So that really supported me. Then the other book she bought me was a book by Jack Cornfield called The Path with Heart. And a few pages again into that, Jack Cornfield describes this Buddhist meditation practice of loving kindness, of metta, loving kindness. And it's this process where we befriend ourselves. We learn to love ourselves. It's a meditation practice where you sit and you silently recite to yourself, may I be safe, may I be well, may I be happy. And we offer ourselves goodwill and friendliness and love. And again, that was totally alien to me. As an Irish Catholic, offering yourself love was not something you did. So this practice was totally alien. It's revolutionary for me. And then when I read his guidelines, he said something along the lines of, you've got to do this for yourself, maybe for weeks, maybe for months, maybe even for years, before you can truly offer love and goodwill to other people. So unless you truly love yourself, you can't love anyone else. And if you truly love yourself, then you won't hurt anyone else. And this was just brand new to me, and I found it so uplifting. But again, they were the only 2 bits of Buddhism I really had, but still visiting the monastery. And it wasn't until 2003 when I walked away from the charity, the Reading charity, because I wanted a closer relationship, a different relationship with the monastery. And in 2003, I went to the monastery and ordained. I just took 4 weeks off work, and I ordained for 29 days as a novice monk at Wat Tankrabokon. That you have 1 meal a day there, which is which is a very interesting way to look at our addiction to food, and the pleasure we get from food. Obviously, you take a vow of celibacy, so no sex for a month, and just you wear robes and you leave all your other clothes behind. So it's a very interesting experience for 29 days to live as a monk, which I did again a couple of years later. I went on their walking pilgrimage, and again I ordained for a month. It was at that point then that I started to dip my toe a bit deeper into the water. Well, what is this really about? But in terms of, I don't want to go too much into Buddhist philosophy and what have you, but this monastery has a very unique approach to Buddhism, very much along the lines of, you make a promise and you keep to it, which is what their drug treatment's about. And if you don't stick to it, the law of karma says that there will be consequences. So the law of karma, bright words, bright thoughts, bright actions generally have bright results. But dark words, dark thoughts, and dark actions generally have dark results. So in terms of making a vow, keeping a vow, people who broke the vow generally had, I've never heard of anyone having a good relapse. So people who broke the vow tended to end up dead or very ill. And I know a lot of people who went to Thailand and they ended up, found with a needle in their arm in in hotel rooms, or they walked in front of trucks because they didn't keep them out.
Wow.
And so that I started to say, well, do not make that journey unless you're prepared to give everything up and start afresh. It's not a miracle cure.
Yeah.
Changing your attitude, changing the way you see the world, changing the way you see yourself and the way you see the world. That's what aids recovery. I think it's Dr. Gabor Mate, the Canadian physician. He says that addictions and compulsions are merely the symptoms of our unresolved childhood issues and childhood traumas. The addictions and compulsions are just the symptoms; they're not the problem. If we think we're treating the addiction and the compulsion, we're merely putting a sticking plaster over it. We need to go back to the root, to the trauma, to the unresolved childhood issues.
Wow. That is very powerful. And obviously, engaging in that type of recovery, you have to be very ready for it. Is that right?
Absolutely. You have to want it. It's a choice. Our addictions are very, very strong, and the Buddhist texts are full of addictions. And the Buddha refers to food addictions and sex addictions. He doesn't really. He mentions alcohol and drugs, but it's not as prevalent as food and sex. Addiction to how we look, addiction to this notion of me, yourself, that has to be protected. So the whole Buddhist path is about greed, hatred, and delusion, or craving, aversion, and confusion. So
you went through that recovery, and you done that recovery, and you went to help your addiction. So after, when you came back from Thailand, so can you give us a bit of a journey when you came back from Thailand? How did you maintain it?
Well, having made the journey to Thailand and spoken to the abbot and making that distinction between stopping myself doing something I wanted to do, which I now saw as being completely deluded and confused, to I want to abandon all that and I want a brand new life. And my life is created in each moment. This is karma. This is my thoughts, my words, my actions that I'm talking now, sitting here to you. It determines what my next moment will be. So I keep forward moment to moment. So, but having had this wonderfully trip to Thailand, met the abbot, made this distinction between abstinence and abandonment, and my freedom lie in abandonment, not being stuck in the past with abstinence. So that's very inspiring, and plus being in quotes again, chairman of a charity taking addicts out to Thailand. I was fully engaged with this process of helping others, and in helping others, of course, I'm helping myself.
Exactly.
So that went on and until 2003, or 2002, I actually left it. I left the charity. In 2003, I did the month as a monk, and then when I came back, I still wanted to help people. Part of the thing part of my month at the monastery in 2003 was I would get up early at 5 o'clock in the morning and go and help supervise the addicts taking the herbal medicine and vomiting at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I got to know a few foreign addicts. Most were Thai, but I got to know a few foreign addicts. And when I came back, I wanted to continue to help people. So I realised that escorting individual addicts from the UK to Thailand was not viable. So although I I did offer that service. What I really want to do was make the whole process easier for anyone. So I set up an independent website giving step-by-step instructions, how to contact the monastery, how to get to Thailand, how to get from the Bangkok airport to the monastery, how to get back, what to expect at the monastery, how much the whole thing would cost, and really making the point, this is not a miracle cure. It's not about the herbal medicine and vomiting. It's not about the herbal tea and going in the steam baths to heal needle wounds and draw toxins out through the body. It's not about the herbal pills that flush toxins through the body. It's not about going to the monks chanting in the evening. That's all very nice. That's the icing on the cake. What matters is that vow, your commitment to leaving your old life behind and taking up a new life. And the monastery only offers a one chance option. There's no second chances. You get one chance at it. If it doesn't work, they won't have you back again. I can remember being in the admissions office, and a young Thai boy was there with his parents, and he'd obviously relapsed. And the Thai American female patient with me, so she knew what the senior monk was saying to the parents. And the senior monk was basically telling the young lad to F off and go kill himself, and so that his parents wouldn't have to worry about him. So there was no second chance. He didn't cut the mustard. He didn't hold back on what he was saying. So my Thai American friend translated for me. So it's a one chance option.
So they are very stringent on their rules then. So if you had a person that wasn't ready and thought initially that they were ready, and then they got there and then they realised that they're not ready, so they wouldn't give them another chance to go and pursue.
It just doesn't happen. Okay. You have your one chance, and if it doesn't work for you, you don't go back. I mean, I've heard of people going there for heroin and taking a lifetime vow for heroin, but they might not have taken a vow for alcohol. And then some years later, they might go back to the monastery and to go through treatment again under the guise that they're doing it for alcohol. Whether that's being completely honest or not, I don't know. All I can say is that everyone is subject to their own karma. Everyone is subject to their own thoughts, words, and actions, and I'm not to be the judge of that.
So can I just ask, because obviously you did say earlier that you had tried AA and that didn't work for you, and I know that we have spoken before, and we mentioned the 12-step program, and I know that in UK that is actually, well, not just in UK, around the world, to be honest with you, that is actually incorporated within the addiction recovery. So I know that when we were talking before, because we actually discussed the 12-step program. So what is it that didn't make you help you recover here in the UK while doing the AA? What was the difference? Did you find that it was actually a 12-step program, but it was put forward differently? Because I know obviously we did actually discuss this, didn't we? As we said in regards to obviously Buddhism, and how Buddhism is actually incorporated within the 12-step program, actually, but that's been taken out. So what is it that you found different for you to actually recover being in the monk monastery than actually doing something here in the UK with AA?
I'm not sure I understand the question entirely. I'll try to answer it like this. I went along to 2 AA meetings, and that was after reading the book, The 12 Steps and the 12 Traditions. And I read that book several times because it was the only support I had. Literally, reading that book was the only support I had. So I eventually went along to two AA meetings, and there are clearly parts of the 12-step program that are very helpful. they get you to look at your own actions and take responsibility for your actions. But there are some parts of it just didn't sit well with me. And at these 2 meetings that I went to in Hampshire, what I noticed was that some people were clearly going to, a 12-step meeting every single day, and it was their family, and it was what kept them sober. It was their support as well as them offering support, and it seemed to me that perhaps that's like swapping the pub for the rooms of AA, and that might be the case. And whatever moves us away from suffering and moves us towards the end of suffering, that's fine. Whatever label we want to put on it, but that wasn't going to be my choice. I didn't want to end up, going to AA meetings 7 days a week in order to keep myself sober. So that sort of didn't gel with me. So that's when I stepped back from that. That's where the Buddhist practice filled that gap for me. Just simply those 5 suggestions, from the Buddha. Don't harm anyone, don't steal, be sexually responsible, try to tell the truth, and don't take alcohol. And that was the core of my practice, the core of my belief system. And plus, I was helping. So in 12-step systems, being of service and helping is a big chunk of that program. And in my own way, although I might be doing it as an individual, I was offering service, which helping others and helping myself at the same time.
Right, Vince, like by faith, you're Christian, yeah?
I was brought up as a Catholic, yeah.
Okay, right. As you know, there's some teachings in every religion. It's like, stay away from harm and be kind and don't abuse yourself. Now, I've noticed, obviously, I'm listening to you, that you're actually very much, you took up the Buddhism teachings. Did you actually you didn't look at anything else, did you? You just looked at the Buddhist teachings, and you enjoyed, and you actually participated in that. I was just wondering, did you ever try looking at other methods around when you were trying to recover?
I sort of paid a small interest in smart recovery, but it wasn't very big at the time, and I could see it being useful, but I found so much support from this Buddhist path, and I don't consider Buddhism to be a religion. I know that it's practiced as a religion. I know that I've ordained as a monk myself. Yeah, that's what I was trying to
get at, because Catholic itself has a lot of sort of, all religions do. Let's be honest here, Vince. They actually have teachings.
They all share this core of universal love and respect. Don't harm your neighbour. They all share that core. Without doubt, they're universal. And even, I talk about the Buddhist precepts, don't harm, don't steal, be sexually responsible, tell the truth, and don't take drugs and alcohol. They're not Buddhist, because when he presented them 2,600 years ago, he said these suggestions are ancient, they're traditional, you can't argue with them. So he was already saying that these guidelines were much older than him. And in fact, if you look at the pre-Buddhist stuff, the Upanishads, you have the yamas, which are very similar suggestions on what to do and what not to do. So this moral guidance, this ethical guidance, has been around for a long time. So I respect Buddhism as when it's practiced as a religion. It's not my practice. It's not my primary practice. I'm very secular in my approach, and from my perspective, Buddhism is a philosophy. It's a personal ethics. It's very practical. It's very pragmatic. This is how life is, and this is one way you can respond to life. The Buddha's original realizations, he was wandering around struggling for 6 years, trying to find out what is this about? How do I end this suffering, this misery of being human? And he came to this realization: well, just life is a bit miserable. Life's very disappointing. Life's very unfair. It's uncomfortable. And life can be traumatic. Life can be very painful, and then just coming to that realization and saying it out loud, well, that's life. So it's a bit like me when I stop drinking. Or what am I going to do about it? What are my choices here? So I come into relationship with life differently. I come into a relationship with life, with some kindness and some compassion, and with a big chunk of joy, and with some wise perspective. This is how life is. What's the wise response to it? So I'm not so. I love the early Buddhist teachings, but I'm not so dogmatic that I'm stuck in them. I'm equally at home in modern neuroscience, which much of modern neuroscience just confirms what the Buddha was saying anyway. The Buddha would say things like, what you frequently think and ponder about, that becomes the inclination of your mind. Whereas a modern neuroscientist would say, well, you are what you eat, and you are what you think. So, modern neuroscience is only confirming what the Buddha had worked out for himself 600 years ago. He was so far ahead of his time. So, he was an ordinary man, and I reading between the lines, he was often struggling. Why else do you leave home? You leave your wife behind and your new child behind. If you're struggling, if you're having an existential crisis, what's it all about? Where can we find freedom? I'm very cautious of religions in general, but very respectful of, in the same way I'm respectful of AA, that helps a lot of people, keeps a lot of people safe. I'm respectful of religions that they support people, they give people some sense of purpose, but they're not my path. They don't fit well with me, like a round peg in a square hole. I very practical, pragmatic. This is my one and only life. What am I going to do with it? Am I going to sit around being miserable and moaning how unfair it is, or am I going to embrace and take delight in the things I have got instead of suffering for the things that I haven't got?
Well, you do seem happy and content. That's without no doubt. You could tell, and I'm happy for your honesty. I am, because I think you've done a great job. You've actually decided and you've actually followed it through. And there's a lot of people out there. They try, but they can't, and then they go back and they fall back into the same trap again and again. And I think that's the point, and that's the sad part of it, because how do you
have to take yourself out of the old environment. I mean, I used to work shifts, so at least my life often revolved around going and work in a 12-hour day shift, home, sleep, back for another 12-hour day shift, home, sleep, and then the same on night shifts. So the fact that I wasn't going down the pub before work, after work, or during my tea breaks was painful at first, but that was easy. I could separate myself from my old life fairly well in that way. So redefining yourself as, this is the new Vince who doesn't drink. He's a Buddhist now. He doesn't drink. He doesn't drink. He's not drinking because he's an alcoholic. He doesn't drink now because he's a Buddhist. So changing that view of oneself, and that view of oneself in the world, in a world that will never meet all my expectations, a world that can never satisfy me. And if I place my happiness outside of myself in some other place, some other time, some other experience, I'm going to be disappointed. But rather than disappointment in drugs and alcohol, I face life as it is. This is life. This is my life. It's nitty gritty. It's uncomfortable, but it's life. And and my coffee still tastes good in the morning. I can smile. So very much, So I met a guy once, and he did some amazing work before he died, and he went to this monastery in Thailand, Tamtrabok, for cocaine. He was a Belgian multimillionaire businessman. He took one line of cocaine and knew he was addicted, and thought he had to do something about it. So he took himself to Wat Tamtrabok for the herbal treatment. And while he was there, he met a young woman from London, a heroin addict, who'd gone through the treatment, and she was in a desperate state because she was going to have to go back to London, back into exactly the same environment she'd come from. And he wasn't an addiction expert, but he knew that she couldn't fall back into bad ways. So the guy's name was Johan, and he actually bought a plot of land in northern Thailand and opened up a wonderful mindfulness-based recovery centre, which is currently closed because of COVID. And what an act of generosity.
Wow.
And New Life Foundation in northern Thailand, been running for 10 years, but hopefully close this year. It's had so many people through its doors, and it was an act of generosity on Johan's part. Sadly, Johan passed away a couple of years ago. A young man, he had his own physical ailments, but he's left behind a wonderful legacy. And in fact, there's a new centre going to open in Portugal along the same lines. New Life Mindfulness Centre in Portugal, hopefully opening at the end of this year. So, going back into your old environment, I think they say this in 12-step group, if nothing changes, then nothing changes.
Yeah, having said that, Vince, if you look around now, obviously you're out of the situation, and you still see, obviously, a lot of, like you said, the community was a norm thing to drink. Have you ever discussed this, just like in a casual manner, how dangerous drinking is? Because we all talk about cigarettes, and I know we've all got the right to do what we like, but I've never seen a huge breakout or a petition or a, something that we can actually go out and say, you know what, we need to stop this. We need to get the government to be aware of this. Has that ever occurred?
Well, it has, and clearly alcohol is a noxious poison.
Yeah, it destroys lives.
Alcohol causes more harm than all the other drugs put together.
Yeah. And still it's considered so normal. I mean, the first thing the Prime Minister said, yeah, the pubs are going to open, go and do what you like. And you're thinking, what are you talking about?
Exactly. And, and I think as well, like during this pandemic, I said a lot of people have actually become addicted to things that they've never even probably come across, And I think, and as you said as well, Vince, surrounding yourself around certain environments is something that actually attracts you to do these types of things. Because that, like, for instance, COVID-19 pandemic, everybody's entrapped within their home. They've got nothing to do there. So what they're going to do, they're going to go into addiction. So, and the thing is that, and I think what it is that people need to be educated on trying to find alternatives, alternative type of, what's that word? I've forgotten that word now. Like basically an alternative solution into finding something else to do or to try and help them to come out of that addicted type of episode that they have. And one thing as well that you mentioned as well, when you started doing the AA, you found the support wasn't as great as you found going to the monk monastery. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Not entirely. It's just the 12-step support wasn't supporting me, as it were.
Okay, so basically,
other people.
What you're saying is that to our listeners out here today, for them to overcome any type of addiction and to go through recovery, they need to find what suits them.
Absolutely. And fortunately now there's so much out there. It's so much better. So as well as all the 12-step groups, you've got Smart Recovery, you've got a whole range nowadays of different Buddhist recovery groups. Huge array. You've got LifeRing, and you've got various other secular, non-religious recovery paths. There's plenty to choose from. Certainly try a few and choose a path that works for you. AA works for a lot of people, great. But equally, I'm aware it doesn't work for a lot more people. Smart Recovery works for a lot of people. But again, equally aware that it doesn't fulfill everyone's needs. Buddhist recovery works for a lot of people, and even, as I say, within the Buddhist recovery network, there are so many different approaches. Yet again, I'm a member of one Buddhist recovery group that just simply promotes the idea of living in harmony with those 5 suggestions. Don't harm ourselves or others, don't steal anything, be sexually responsible, speak kindly and truthfully, and don't take drugs and alcohol. Very simple, way of aligning our lives. So a very simple path, whereas other Buddhist recovery paths are based around books and people following certain paths. One of my very good friends, Kevin Griffin, he wrote a book called Buddhism and the 12 Steps, and he very successfully blends the two paths. The book's called One Breath at a Time, Buddhism and the 12 Steps. I think it came out in 2004, and I read it at the time, and it made a lot of sense to me from a 12-step perspective, and a lot of sense to me from a Buddhist perspective. I learned a lot of Buddhism from Kevin's book, and I'm very pleased to say that in 2004 I didn't know who Kevin was. 2021 now, Kevin's a good friend, and although we come from different perspectives, we're very supportive of each other. I was very lucky to teach a weekend retreat with Kevin in Ireland a few years ago, and the participants said it was amusing to see our different perspectives in teaching the recovery path. But in terms of, I really, really would love to see meditation be taught to kindergarten children, how to regulate their emotions, how to sit still. It's just learning to be with ourselves. The French
quite a good idea. That is very good, yeah. Because I've worked with not just kindergarten reception in year one, and I think the kind of food and the the factors that are involved in our lives, the rays and X-rays and all these 5Gs and everything. I think kids are so hyper, and I really, really do think some therapy of that kind should be taught with children to sit silently and understand themselves, and just give that moment of peace, because they're so hyper.
Yeah, I think it was back in the 1700s, the French philosopher and mathematician Blaise Pascal said that all of humanity's problems come from man's inability to sit silently alone in a room.
Yes,
that was years ago, and we're still not doing it now.
Yeah.
So to teach kids that it actually doesn't hurt to sit and be quiet. Not only teach kids, teach adults, to sit with discomfort, to sit and be quiet. But that's only one part of it. So learning how to stabilize our body, to still our body, to still our mind, only one part. What we really need to teach kids and adults is how the brain works, and how we will go craving for things to fill the void. It's what the brain does. We need to teach people this, so that it doesn't matter to me if someone has a bottle of vodka, a few lines of cocaine, a rock, some rocks of crack, whether they shoot up heroin. It's none of my business if they want to smoke. It's really none of my business. If that makes them happy, that makes them happy. As long as it's not harming anyone and doesn't directly impact me, that really is none of my business. That's how someone's coping with life's disappointments, life's boredom. Whether that's a healthy way to deal with it, I don't know. There's just as many people who deal with the same issues via sex, via chocolate, via overeating, undereating, or they slip into anxiety and depression. They're all just reacting to how life is. Can
deal with it, yeah.
If we teach people the brain work, we can avoid some of this.
Yeah. Do you know what? I completely, I can relate to that, because, with myself, I have been smoking since the age of 13. Now, the thing is that with myself, it's all to do with the mindset. And you're right, because I'm not an addictive person. So I can smoke for one full whole year, or I can smoke for a good 5 years and not smoke for another 10 years. It does not bother me at all. I'm not one of those people that I have to have it. And I remember as well, back when I was 18, I used to do a lot of yoga and meditation, and I'd done that for quite a few years, and it really, really helped my mindset in how I felt about myself and how I felt about surroundings. So yeah, you're absolutely right in regards to what you're saying, because I believe that that is a really strong power to have, is to have your mind fully fresh and also you're able to think more thoroughly as well in regards to what you're doing and where you are and how you react to things. And you know what, they have actually incorporated meditation now to young children in school. They have incorporated down here in the south, because I it's true, I think they are finding children to be quite hyper especially with all the technology that's happening. You know,
and all the medications they give as well, Billy. If you're ADHD, they'll give you some medication. If you're, you know, anything that's not so-called normal, they put you on medication, not realizing that actually gets them more hyper. In some cases it just inflames them, and it's sad because the simple teaching is calming a child down. It's really just sitting there and letting them relax, and they don't allow that much because they think that time could be utilized by them running around and playing around, whereas this is also a way of connecting with your inner soul, really, isn't it?
Definitely.
It's definitely an opportunity to learn to sit with a calm body and a calm mind, and so that's one part of meditation. The other part of meditation is using that stillness to see how things really are, to see that, you know, everything is impermanent and transient and temporary, and it will pass. Whatever it is, it will pass. Nothing lasts. And equally, you know, let's put it, so as well as teaching, you know, meditation and how to calm the body and how to use that calmness to investigate our own experience, you know, we should be teaching kids, you know, modern psychology and evolutionary psychology, and maybe a bit of Buddhist psychology as well, in terms of, you know, a lot of our distress, a lot of our discomfort, a lot of our behaviour is driven by our craving for stimulation, our craving to be someone, or even our aversion to being someone, and we, you know, craving to be no one, to disappear. And these play themselves out both in Buddhist psychology and in modern psychology and in evolutionary psychology. Just these basic traits of the mind to crave for sensual pleasure, to crave for excitement, to crave for novelty, to crave for status, to crave for affiliations. So these cravings, we're constantly assailed with them. We want this, we want that. My life won't be, you know, right until I've got this. But if we can't get those things we want, then we out of our aversion, we want to numb ourselves. What can I do to numb myself from this pain, from these disappointments, from this distress? And we should be teaching this to our kids. Watch what your brain, you know, your thoughts are real, but they're not necessarily true.
Right then, Vince, that was really nice of you to come on today. Honestly, I really learned a lot. Like, I know we spoke before, and I remember me and Millie were just quiet because we just took so much in last time. But before you go, I would like to just actually ask you, what advice would you give and directions to people that are actually in a situation as you were, but you managed to get yourself out? And I also know you do courses and classworks and on Zoom. How can they get in touch with you?
Well, you know, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage really, because, you know, I got sober 24 years ago, so I know that, you know, the treatment environment out there is very different. But you know, I'd certainly, nothing's going to change if nothing changes. So I would reach out for help. You know, be that through a GP or through a treatment centre, a drug and alcohol support service. Certainly through investigating recovery programs like SMART, like 12-step programs, or any of the Buddhist programs. And you know, from my own point of view, I can just say that it's not a leap into the dark. It is a leap into the light. And my life, and everyone I speak to who's in recovery, they'll confirm it. You know, my life only got better. It didn't get worse. As long as I left my old life behind, I don't want to go back there. So there is life without drugs and alcohol. You know, there is a life of freedom. You know, freedom from blame, freedom from guilt, freedom from shame, freedom from craving, freedom from aversion, and freedom from confusion. As long as you're still using, you're still stuck in that craving, that aversion, and that confusion cycle, just going round and round in circles, and then wondering how you find yourself back where you started. So, getting free of addictions, intoxications, or whatever they might be, is possible, and it's a good life. And it's a worthwhile life, but you have to see yourself differently. You have to see the world differently. Dropping some of our expectations for the world to fulfill our needs. Waking up in the morning and screaming at the world, "Make me happy," ain't going to work. So happiness is very much an inside job. I forget the rest of your question. So
the last one, I think you mentioned the Zooms and social media.
So I teach Hungry Ghost retreats. There's in Buddhist psychology, Buddhist mythology, cosmology, there are these realms of becoming. There's the hell realms of the animal realm, which we might equate to just surviving, just getting by, struggling from day to day, a mind state. Or there's a hot and cold hell realm where we're mental torture, depression, anxiety, with self-hatred, self-loathing. And the last hell realm is the hell realm of hungry ghosts, where our appetites cannot be satisfied, our cravings can never be satisfied. We just constantly get craving, and one description says that everything we touch turns to shit. And what a wonderful description of So these three hell realms, which I see as just mind states that we move through from moment to moment. And then there are a couple of heaven states, and there's the realm of the gods, where you've got everything you possibly need. And then the other heaven realm is the realm of human beings, just being human. 10,000 joys, 10,000 sorrows, and that's life. But so I offer retreats and classes under the name of Hungry Ghost Retreats. This movement from being a hungry ghost to becoming human, without having to go through all the other hell realms in the meantime. So generally I offer 5-day retreats or weekend retreats, occasionally 1-day retreats, face-to-face. But of course, the pandemic has changed all of that at the moment. And I have a 5-day retreat lined up for Devon in next July 2022. Normally I teach in India, Nepal, USA, Thailand, England, Ireland, and anywhere that will invite me, really. But I'm doing some Zoom sessions at the moment on forgiveness and how we can, in fact, the lessons are called the Heart of Forgiveness.
I need to come on that Zoom.
They're an ongoing series, and they're proving very popular.
I'm telling you, I need to come on that one.
So if you want to look those up, you just look up Hungry Ghost Retreats, or look up my name, Vince Cullen, and all this will come up. And the other thing I do is the Buddhist support group, which is not just me. It's a fellowship. It's a Buddhist fellowship in recovery, and that's simply called the Fifth Precept group. 5TH Precept or FIFTH Precept group, Buddhist group, and it's just people, not necessarily who would self-identify as addicts, but people who just simply want to live in harmony with those 5 suggestions: don't kill, don't steal, be sexually responsible, try to tell the truth, and don't take drugs and alcohol. And so that group's available as well to offer support, and there are regular Zoom sessions on that.
Thank you so much for that, Vince. Thank you. Really appreciate you. Sorry, Millie.
Yeah. All right.
Millie.
Huh? Check one.
Hi, Bless.
No.
How you doing?
Thank you so much, Vince. Listening to you today, and obviously there'll be a lot of listeners out here today that are listening to your story and your life journey of what you've overcome and what you went prior to your recovery, which is very, very fascinating to hear, and also it will give encouragement to people out there that are listening today, and give them a bit of insight of exactly what you went through and how you overcome it. So we are hoping that this will help our listeners into just making the first step into their recovery, which we are very, very grateful for you sharing your story with us.
Yes, thank you, Vince.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you for.
Yeah, hold on, Vince. Bless. The main man wants to talk to you.
All right. How you doing, Vince? How are you doing, Vince? All right.
I'm very well.
That's good. I've been listening to your story. Very interesting. Question. When you was an addict, was you addicted to alcohol or was you addicted to drugs?
My drug of choice was alcohol. I didn't go near drugs. I did make the choice when I gave up alcohol not to take up drugs. That was a very conscious, deliberate choice because it could have been an easy thing to do. But no, my drug of choice, my preference was just alcohol.
Okay, so that means but you do have some experience with people that has been on drugs, though, of talk.
Oh yeah, I've helped a lot of people: heroin addicts, crack addicts, cocaine addicts, pot addicts. As well as sex addicts and overeaters and sugar addicts. All get treatment. Yeah,
Okay.
Addiction's addiction. No matter what the substance is, the addiction is merely the symptom of the underlying problem.
Okay.
Whether that's sex, chocolate, crack, alcohol, it doesn't matter. Or Facebook, Netflix, it doesn't matter. They're merely the symptoms of the underlying discomfort, the underlying disquiet, the underlying sense of not enough.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Cool. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna ask a couple questions that basically from the point of view of somebody who's on drugs, not myself, but people that are listening. So people are listening to the conversation, but I'm saying there's somebody listening and they're on drugs. What would they ask you? And that's what I'm asking you from that point of view. For anybody who's locked on or are going through some drug abuse or whatever
the most
addiction.
common question
I
hear
go on.
Generally on social media, occasionally people ask me directly, how do I get off it? How do I stop? I can't stop.
Yeah, that's the straightforward question.
And
right, question I'm going to ask you.
I can't really answer it. You have to get to that point.
Well, I'm going to ask you.
My stopping wasn't an inspiration; it was desperation.
All right, I'm going to ask you.
I got to that rock bottom, and then I knew I had my choice. I had to make that choice. Do I want to live or do I want to die?
All right, so you wanted to live.
And that's it. And people get to that point, or get to a point like that. They think it's that point, and they think, "Oh, I'm going to choose life," and they can't do it.
Oh, okay.
And they fall back into their addiction. And if they're lucky enough, eventually at another rock bottom, they ask themselves that same question. But you've really got to believe. The mind is so stuck in this. I need to kill my pain. When we get to this point in our addiction, we're doing it because of the withdrawal's too painful. Life's too painful. We're not doing it for fun anymore. We're doing it because it's almost self-medication. It is I'm not an addiction expert. I'm sorry. I'm not even an expert on my own addiction. But these are just what I've experienced, what I've come acrost. So okay. I'm not professional in any sense of it. But for me, my own movement was out of desperation, not out of inspiration, and it was a matter of I choose life. Okay. And I didn't know what life it would be.
All right. Well, everybody chooses life. Everybody chooses life, but some people they can't deal with life. Some people can't handle life itself. Some they're going through a journey. Maybe they break up in a relationship. Maybe something goes wrong in the home. Yes,
it's gone quiet.
All right, can you hear me?
Again, bless.
Yeah.
Repeat the question, please.
All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me? No. Yeah. No.
Hold on, Vince. I think he gets disconnected like that.
How am I getting?
We're all in 4 different places right now.
Nah, I shouldn't be
connecting.
Nah, I shouldn't be disconnecting. It happens. Sure. It only happens on here. I hear.
I think what he's trying to get at is that if someone is in a position where they are actually drug addicts, what he's trying to get at, I think.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, go on. No.
Okay, all right then. I got it now. Right. What you're saying is I was talking about addicts, first, yeah?
Yeah. People in active addiction.
Right. So some people, as you said earlier on, some people can't really handle life, i.e., could have been family situation, whatever the situation may be, especially break up in relationships and stuff like that. Girls left them, they turn to drugs, whatever the case may be. Yeah. They use drugs to escape from dealing with this. Give us one way how they can get out of that trap, because it is a trap in the end. Yeah. So when somebody falls into this trap of addiction, what was the main thing, or what was something that can get them out of that trap? Addiction is a trap, regardless of how you want to see it. Yeah, they can say it's an addiction. Yeah, but addiction is also a trap, because now you know what I mean. So how do you get out of that trap? I'm going to ask you some questions to let your brain think. Yeah.
You certainly are. But in terms of relationships, statistically, the most common cause of people relapsing after they got clean is relationship issues.
Yeah.
So both before, during addiction, active addiction, and after active addiction, relationships are a big thing, a big cause of upset. We move from our, seeking, stimulation, seeking excitement, seeking novelty, from those days of drug use or alcohol use into, dependence, where it's no longer any fun. It's just a matter of self-medicating, and at that point, if your life has got that bad, and you realize it's that bad, and you're going to be honest with yourself and say, this is an addiction that it's going to kill me. You simply got to make that choice. I say simply, it's hard. It's harder than that. But if life, it doesn't get any better by taking drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
It's temporary. It's relief, but it's not release. It gives us temporary relief from the pain and difficulties of life, and that's where from my perspective, that's where Buddhist psychology comes in, because Buddhist psychology starts from this point. Well, life is difficult anyway, so that's your starting point. So if you're going to have an argument with life being difficult, you're going to lose it. So you've got to start at that point. There's the lovely little talk the Buddha gives, and he says, look, there's two types of sickness. He says, there are some people in the world who say, for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. There are some people in the world who, even for 100 years, they can say they've had no physical illness. He said, but there's very few people in the world that even for one moment can say they've been free of mental illness. So he starts from this. This is our bottom line. We're all, he's effectively saying we're all mad.
Okay.
Because we can't see reality. That life is difficult. So from my perspective, I deal with life, with every experience now, from the heart, because that's the only wise response. Try not to do it from the head.
Okay.
I do it from every experience from the heart. Can I meet this experience of kindness? Can I meet this experience of compassion? Can I meet this experience of joy and gladness? Or do I meet this experience from a wise perspective, with some self-balance? And that's what this psychology is trying to teach us. Now, life is difficult, so what's the best way to deal with it? Drugs and alcohol, you want to do that and numb yourself from life, because that's all it's doing, isn't actually numbing yourself, it's taking you out of your life. If you really want to live and experience the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, then you've got to do it drug-free.
Okay. All right. Next question. I'm gonna cut the question short, because I don't want to like let your hair grow all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Right.
You can give him some, bless.
All right, then listen. Right. You mentioned about the hell realm.
The hell realm, yeah.
Right. In spiritual battles, have you been through any spiritual battles, or do you add anybody that you've spoken to that have been through spiritual battles connecting to the hell realm?
Only in a psychological sense.
Right.
Obviously not not in a physiological sense. These realms are presented as future lifetimes. If you've got bad karma, you're going to end up in one of the hell realms, depending upon your karma. If you've got good karma, you're going to end up in one of the heaven realms. But that's a very old, 2,000-year-old teaching that really is about our mind states from one moment to the next. So I can have a hellish mind state, the hot and cold hell realm mind state of self-hatred, self-loathing. I don't need anyone to torture me because I'm torturing myself. Okay. Or I can simply be in the animal hell realm where I'm just getting by, I'm just surviving. I'm living on my wits, living on my instincts, moment to moment, day to day. And it's a hellish place to be. And I know there are many people that live that way. I live that way. And then there are people in active addiction in the hungry ghost realm, who it doesn't matter what they're craving, they can never be satisfied with their craving. Sex, chocolate, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, whether they're craving love and to be loved, their craving can never be satisfied. These are hellish mind states to be in.
All right. Well, there's a reason. The reason why I'm saying this. The reason why I'm saying this. Yeah, because when some people are on drugs or addicted to anything.
Sorry, but let's go cut off.
What? Can you hear me now, Vince?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
When some people are going through some hellish realms, right? I'm talking to you now. Sometimes you have some people who are addicts or drug addicts or whatever the case may be, and they reach the point of self-harming. Yeah. Now that is what I would classify as one of the hell realms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Now, what would you say concerning that? If somebody even has the thought of self-harming themselves, but there is a drug-related issue connected to it because of the reason why they're on the drugs or the addiction in the first place. So they're addicted to something because they're trying to hide a problem. Now now the problem excels. Some people will go to the point of thinking of self-harming. Yeah?
Absolutely.
What would you say about that? Your hair's growing.
Yeah. The three ways that we respond to life are, we crave for excitement, or we crave to be someone, or we crave to be no one. Yeah. And that's where the self-addiction and self-harm comes in. We crave to be no one. We crave to be free of the pain. And so they're the three types of craving. Craving for stimulation, craving to be someone, and craving not to be anyone. And as you say, the addictions and the self-harm are manifestations of a deeper disquiet, a deeper hurt, a deeper pain. So it's that we need to address, to start, to bring some self-love for ourselves, some self-compassion. Being human, bloody hard. So bring some compassion to that, bring some kindness to that, offer ourselves some self-love. And from the point of view of equanimity, of wise perspective, life is difficult. So I just got to stop fighting that fact. And if possible, somewhere along the way, with the right balance of self-love, of self-compassion, of self-balance through this wise perspective, then I might get some self-joy. And actually, life's difficult, but I can still enjoy my coffee. My coffee's still good.
Okay.
So while you're in the hellish mind states, it is hell, absolute hell. And the good thing about Buddhist hells, though, is that everything's temporary and transient. Nothing's permanent. You do get out of them, but equally, if you're in one of the heaven realms, you can move out of that to a hellish realm. So it swings and roundabouts. So nothing lasts forever. Everything is transient.
All right. Well, a lot of people can't go and see a Buddha, right? So go to Buddhism. So they'll have to contact you in the Zoom meeting and have a proper discussion about that. I'm gonna backtrack a little. Go on.
You don't have to be a Buddhist for this stuff. This stuff is, you strip the Buddha out of it. It doesn't matter. The core understanding, the core principles are universal. They're what modern neuroscience offers us. It's what evolutionary psychology offers us. Whether you put the Buddha's name on it or not doesn't matter. the Dalai Lama says you use this stuff to be a better whatever you already are. A better Christian, a better Jew, a better atheist, whatever you already. You use these principles, you know, to heal yourself. You don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to become a Buddhist. Just, you know, see the world different. See the world as it really is. This difficult, disappointing, unsatisfying place, but a place with huge potential for happiness and a life well lived.
Okay. Next question. I'm gonna make your hair grow, my friend. I'm determined. I'm determined. Right. Question. You're gonna have to think about this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're going through addiction of any kind, you personally, yeah. How did it affect your family and your loved ones when you was going through this?
Very badly, very hurtfully, because when you're in active addiction, you know, you contract. You just contract around this sense of self that has to be protected, this sense of self that has to be satisfied. It has to get its drug of choice. It has to get its medicine. It has to feel better. I can recall, it must be a couple of years ago here now in Ireland, and I'm living on my own, and I think it was a Thursday evening, and I just finished my dinner, and I had this sudden urge that I must have ice cream. I must have ice cream, and my nearest supermarket is a 25-minute drive away. I live in the middle of nowhere, but this feeling was guttural. It was, I contracted around, I'm going to die unless I get ice cream. I'm going to die, and it almost took me back to my drinking days of how desperate I was. You know, if I didn't have enough money in my pocket for another beer, I would be in desperate states. So I didn't care about my wife. I didn't care about my children. I didn't care about my job. Not in any real sense. All I cared about was making myself feel better. So, yeah, you know, so everything, our sense of reason just disappears. We can't see ourselves properly. We can't see the world properly. We lose all sense of propriety in our relationships. It's hard, you know, that really is the hell realms. Yeah. Hell realm mindset.
Right. So the point that I'm getting at is, like, I want the viewers to understand, or have I want the viewers to understand or have a little picture of what your family actually went through, what you did to them.
Yeah, they went through hell. You know, I eventually got divorced after 30 years, after, you know, ups and downs, and the divorce that's 19 years after I got sober. So
why did she divorce you?
Because at that time we could actually be quite honest and say, well, we've both grown, nothing stays the same. She was different because of all of her experiences. I was different because of all of my experiences, and now it's the right time to separate, you know, in a very amicable, supportive way. So I'm still on very good terms with my ex-wife. And I was in a long-term relationship after my marriage, and my ex-wife is now in a long-term relationship, and, you know, I'm delighted for her. So, but, and I say my two children, both of them have engaged in therapy to process their own wounds from their own childhood, and I thoroughly encourage it. You know, I was a crap dad. I was a useless dad. I didn't know how to be a parent. I didn't know how to love myself, let alone love my kids. I didn't know how to love my wife at the time, because all that mattered was feeding my addiction, feeding this sense of self, this contracted self that needs to be satisfied. Once you start practicing, you know, the self-love and self-compassion, self-forgiveness, self-joy, that contracted sense of self isn't there anymore. You expand, you open out. You're not shut down. You come alive.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked that, because in some cases, when somebody are in a situation of addiction, sometimes it can affect the child, and the child may grow up rebellious or dysfunctional or do something because of the hurt that the person on the addiction is doing.
Absolutely. Without that's one of those unresolved childhood traumas that leads to another addiction.
Yeah.
So that Philip Larkin poem about man hands on misery to man. You know, that's what we do. We're just handing our own misery onto the next generation, and that's why it's so important now. Let's teach our kids how to meditate and how to sit still the importance of sitting still, the importance of watching our own thoughts and realizing where the thoughts are real, but they're not necessarily true. Teach our kids how the brain works, how we're naturally drawn to craving, how we're naturally drawn to aversion, and how we're naturally confused. So to see ourselves differently, see the world differently. So if we educate ourselves differently, and I hurt my kids, I hurt my ex-wife. It wasn't intentional. They're they're a result of an active addiction, and we don't want to do it. But the addiction takes over our life. I say my own father was an alcoholic. His father was an alcoholic. On my mum's side of the family, long line of alcoholics. So it's generational discomfort, generational suffering being handed down and down and down.
Okay.
If you've got alcoholic parents, you've got 1 in 4 chance of being alcoholic yourself.
Right, and that's the point I'm trying to make, because a lot of people who are on these drugs don't realize that it may cause an effect that your child may end up making the same mistake that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Right, so this is why I brought that point up. Next question. I know you don't like these questions, but you're going to have to spill the beans, my friend. Right. Question number, this one. What was the biggest challenge that you went through before you recovered, apart from the Buddhism stuff?
When you say challenge while I was still in active addiction?
Yeah.
Or challenge after, once I recovered? Or once I stopped drinking?
No, challenge on the way to stopping your addiction. Because when you want to stop an addiction, sometimes you go through, I just have one more drink. But then it comes to a point where you have to draw the line. What was the biggest challenge for you?
2 things happened on the same night.
Yeah.
One was I was on a night shift, and on the night shift around, I went for a drink around 10 o'clock in the evening until about 11:30. I must have drunk about 6 pints, and I knew I was going to have to drive home in a few hours' time after the night shift. So although I took that drink and I did drive home, I was very, very conscious that I could not only kill myself, I could kill someone else. And this I'd only recently passed my driving test, because I'd put off because I've been drinking for so many years. I put off my driving test as long as possible until my wife actually forced me to take a driving test and start driving. So that shocked me that that this was becoming a pattern, that I was driving to work and drinking. So that shocked me. And the other thing was, on the same evening, my wife had gone out with a male friend that she'd known for years, and that upset me. And I put the 2 things together. As I say, everything we do is a result of causes and conditions. So those causes and conditions came together at that time. I'd had the verbal warning at work about my drinking. I'd represented 3 people in industrial tribunal or employment tribunals about their own drinking. 2 had kept their job, 1 had lost his job. I was drinking and driving. My wife was becoming friends again with a man friend. Everything comes together, and my own sort of couple of years of trying to stop drinking, trying to regulate my drinking, and it all came together to this point. Well, no, I have a choice now, to either live or die. And it was in fact, it was the following day. I'd finished my night shifts were finished, so I had the evening off, and I got up in the afternoon, had something to eat, and then that evening I poured out that 1 glass of lager and said, "This is it. I can't do this anymore. This is my last drink, and I'm not going to switch addictions. This is it. Whatever the world holds for me now." And I used to think that people who didn't drink or take drugs were mad, but I said, whatever the world holds for me now, this is it. This is where I'm going. This is the direction I'm going in.
Ah, okay, right. That's good. Right. Next question. You're loving this. I know you're loving this.
I tell you one thing, Bless, I'm proud of you for listening in.
No, listen, I tell you why. Because I know a lot about this.
We're waiting for Bless's questions to come in.
No, because I know a lot about this topic. This addiction topic I know a lot about. I'm not a specialist, but I've had a lot of experience with people who are on drugs and has been on drugs. Yeah. So this is why I'm talking to him from the other side. Yeah. Now,
exactly, yeah.
Because social media can also be an addiction. Big time. Yeah. How do we deal with this? Because a younger generation are hooked on this addiction. This social media is just as bad as crack and cocaine or alcohol.
Yeah.
You take it in moderate, like what you said before. Some people do it, that's their business. That's not your concern. Yeah, but social media is also, from my point of view, can be as bad as alcohol. What's your point on that?
It is absolutely as bad as alcohol. It lights up the same bits of the brain as alcohol and cocaine. And Facebook and Twitter and these companies know it.
They know it.
The same.
Yeah. Another form of addiction.
The same as Tate and Lyle knew that sugar was addictive.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. These companies know what they're doing. They're tuning into how the brain works. That's why I said we've got to teach kids how their brains work. You know, when the dopamine gets released, so you get a like on Facebook, bang of dopamine, lovely. You don't get any likes at all. You want to take something to ease the pain that you're being ignored. So it has a huge impact. It is a serious issue. I don't know what the answer is.
Okay.
A friend of mine in New York has written a book about becoming unhooked from social media. It is a big issue because it plays on all the same bits of the brain that alcohol, cocaine, and sex and sugar does. We get the same every like we get. We get that same reward. Same with Instagram, and it's this I mentioned the craving to be. So the craving for excitement, craving for stimulation, craving for novelty, craving to be someone, and that includes status. So how many likes I get on Instagram, how many likes I get on a Facebook post, there's all craving for status. And these are ancient biological functions built into the human being, to get us through life. And these companies are just abusing those for profit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, so
that's good.
Right.
That's good, right? Because what I have learned is that remember the fruit machines.
Oh yes.
Right. Now that's an addiction. That was an addiction before drugs. We used to go fun fair just to see these things. Yeah. But right now the thing about it is my take on it is this. What's happening with the social media is just like the fruit machines. The mobile phone is doing the same thing that the fruit machine does. You have to scroll up and down like the fruit machine spinning around and around. Now, you are coming to be addicted to these colors and these lights, and this scrolling becomes an addiction. And that's what happens with the fruit machines. But it's also linked with personal issues. So it's a lot of stuff put in, like what you said earlier on. The people that make these things know what they're doing. And a lot of our young people are totally addicted to social media and don't know that they're addicted. They think or accepting that this is the norm. This is the thing. This is the way it is. It's not the way it is. It's the way you want it to be. Yeah, life is a natural thing outside in nature, in the natural environment, what the Creator has made for us all. This is material things. When you are sick or when you need help, these things are not going to help you. This social media is not going to be there for you when you're lying in a hospital bed with a mask on or breathing through a vent. Right? So this is what I'm saying. This addiction that people have for social media to have a status can be their biggest downfall, just like drugs.
I 100% agree, 110% agree with you, and that's why we need to, to be honest with adults and children. This is how your brain works. This is what your brain does when someone gives you a like on Facebook or a like on Instagram.
Okay.
This is what your brain does. It lights up the same bit of your brain as a line of coke, or as an orgasm, or as a spoon of sugar. And you're getting sucked in here. You're being pulled into addiction, because it's prior to all of our technology, having status meant that you had more chance of making friends and more chance of getting a wife, more chance of keeping a wife. So So status is a really big thing in being human. So for the social media companies to use those mechanisms to draw you in and to keep you drawn in and keep you flicking up and down, scrolling up and down for the next stimulation, the next bit of excitement, the next like. Yeah, they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing, but the people don't know what they're doing. They don't know the dangers that they're doing. I'm going to give you an example. Would you look in the mirror and swear at yourself?
Personally, no.
No. Right.
No.
Right. My point is this.
No.
If a person can stand in front of the mirror and slag off themselves and cuss themselves off and say they're this and that, this is an example now. Somebody's looking in the mirror and they're slagging themselves off. Yeah. Now, what they don't realize, this same tool that they're addicted with, which is social media. Yeah.
Repeat it.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Wow, Vince looks like he'd be listening in.
Right. So this same thing.
He's gonna make sure you're not just your hair grows. He's gonna make sure your beard grows as well.
Listen, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So this same thing called social media, which is an addiction, it's also got a black screen which is called a scryry mirror.
Okay.
That black screen on your phone is a scryry mirror. They used to use it in witchcraft. Yeah. Now, when somebody is looking into the phone and slagging off someone, they're actually reflecting it back on themselves through this scryry mirror without realizing what they're doing. So when you've got this phone in your hand, you have to use it in the correct way as the tool, in a nice way, in a humble way. If you use it as a weapon, you're going to using that weapon also against yourself. Mm-hmm. Because you're actually talking into a mirror. If you clean the phone good enough, you can actually see your reflection in it.
That's a very nice analogy, and I can see how it would work. I smiled when you said about looking at yourself in the mirror and swearing, because for years, even up until maybe 7 years ago, I didn't really ever look in a mirror. But in the last few years, I do look in a mirror quite often during the day, and I smile at myself. I give myself a big, big, heartwarming smile. Wow. And then in terms, this is who I am. I'm getting older. Every breath I take is one less breath I'm going to have before I take my last breath and die. So in the mirror. But in terms of social media, and of course, part of social media's attraction is to get you riled up, to get you into conflict, to get you to be, angry at the screen. And that's why I come back to what I said about, meeting every experience with love, compassion, joy, or equanimity. And I just don't do that. If I can't write something that's kind, honest, and not offensive, then I won't write it at all. So it's this change in mindset. There's, every like, every conflict, is an assault, and again I said about this contraction around the sense of self that needs to be protected, that needs to be kept safe, and which is a self that doesn't exist. We're protecting something that's not really there. So that as many likes as you want isn't going to make me real. So it's not seeing the world properly, and anger. I'm running this forgiveness workshops now, and anger is never hatred is never cured with more hatred. Hatred and anger are only ever cured with love. This is an ancient and eternal law.
Okay.
Non-Buddhist, it's just ancient and eternal. Hatred is never overcome with hatred. By love alone is hatred overcome.
All right. Well, we're going to move back to the mirror.
Okay.
We're going to move back to the mirror a little bit more, because the reason why I'm going through this is because I want people to realize this in life. You cannot lie to yourself. And I'm going to prove it. Yeah. So what I'm saying is this. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and honestly said to yourself, I love me?
Probably about an hour and a half ago.
All right. Now, the reason why I'm saying that,
I'm going to say this because this is an active practice, a daily practice of self-love, self-compassion, self-joy, self-appreciation. I might call myself a Buddhist or whatever. So this is actually something I do that supports my recovery.
aye.
I can't recover. I can't recover if I'm full of self-loathing, self-hatred. If I'm deceiving myself, I can't do that. So self-love, self-compassion, self-joy, and self-balance are part of recovery. They're part of waking up to life and being happy.
That's why I made this point, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I love myself," although they got problems and issues and some serious issues, but they say they still love themselves. Yeah. So I'm saying, if you love yourself, you can't lie to yourself. Now, when you look in the mirror and look into your own eyes, tell yourself, "I love me," and look at the way you're treating yourself and say, "Am I telling the truth?" So
You need to love yourself.
yeah, but it's easy to
before
say
anything.
it. It's easy to say it.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
When you're looking yourself in the eye, honestly, eyeball to eyeball, you can't lie to yourself.
I can't look at myself in the eye though, bless. I've got a weak eye.
Well, when you love yourself, you will be able to do that. Like what Vince said. Vince made that point that he does it every day. And when you truly love yourself, you can do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
That is true. It's self-manifestation, and this is what I was saying to Vince as well. You need to put that self-manifestation within yourself to help yourself grow.
Okay.
And this is something we haven't, and I think children need to be taught that in school, to be honest with you, because this is something that we lack, and it's something that we're not taught at home, and we're not taught through the educational system. Because I feel that if we start to love ourselves the way that we should, and and I think that we will manifest into something a lot more beautiful, and we'll have a lot more power to overcome obstacles in life that we face.
Okay. Right.
And because at young age, bless, like we're put into like this type of society where we're pleasing others and not pleasing ourselves.
Okay, so what's your take on that, Vince? On what we've just said? When you have to truly, people say they love themselves, but they cannot look in the mirror eyeball to eyeball. You can do it every day because you're honest with yourself. But when we really know the traumas that how we actually treat ourselves, our vessel, our body, our temple, our family, our children, can we look in the mirror and say we love ourselves? And you said you can, and that shows me that you've overcome a lot.
And as I qualified, it's not something I could always do. Even sober, it's only something I've been able to do since I got divorced, since I've been living on my own a lot. Is actually continuing to cultivate this practice of self-love and self-compassion and self-joy, and without deception. This idea of as an addict, it's a constant round of self-deception. We're deceiving ourselves and we're deceiving everyone else around us, or at least we believe we're deceiving other people. They can see straight through it. But actually coming to this point where, if I truly love myself, then I can't hurt anyone else. I don't want to hurt anyone else if I truly love myself. And that's why I've made a point. It's within Buddhism. There are practices, meditation practice, this meditation practice, that. Just walking practice. But even just looking in the mirror and smiling at myself and accepting this is who I am. It's not who I was. This is who I am today. It's not who I'm going to be tomorrow. But for now, this is who I am, and to resist it, to react to it, and not to meet it with kindness, it's just more suffering upon suffering. Life, as I say, life's difficult. Why make it any harder on ourselves?
Well, it's like a relationship. Like if you're really going to have a relationship with somebody, or you like somebody, it's like you got to take stages. So some people can't look themselves in the eye at first. But it's just like if you love somebody or you meet someone and you like them, you're kind of shy and you can't really look at them in the eye because you get a little bit shy. But it's a bit like that. It takes stages. Gradually, it will get stronger and stronger. So those who are locked on and feel that, oh, they can't do that, it takes stages, just like a relationship. Gradually, but still tell yourself you love yourself. But one day you will get to the point where you can look eyeball to eyeball and feel proud and say it proudly. It just takes, you have to keep working on it and it will become your reality.
There's something there about looking into the eyes and seeing the soul, seeing what's that deep down there. And that can be a frightening experience because we don't want to see what's there. We don't want to see the hurts and the wounds and the inner child that's not healed. So it takes work.
Yeah.
It's not a single process. It's not a single event. It's a gradual process to heal ourselves, heal our our lost childhoods, our lost dreams, and to come to terms with how our life is today. To be able to look into my own eyes in the mirror, or look into a loved one's eyes with honesty, without fear. This is who I am, warts and wounds and all.
Okay, so for those who say they don't love themselves and find it hard to do that, I will tell you this: you were born out of love. Your true essence is love.
Exactly.
Yeah, you are created out of love.
It's a very common problem, and it's not universal. There are some cultures in the world where self-loathing is not understood.
Yeah.
Why would you not love yourself?
Well, as I said, it's a gradual thing.
It's not universal.
Okay.
It's taught in certain societies and in certain regions. In other societies and regions, it's alien to them. Self-loathing, in fact, they're learning it now only because they're integrating with the West.
Yeah.
So it's not universal. We're being taught to hate ourselves.
Yes.
Yes, this is exactly what I was saying, Vince. Like as growing up as children, like before you start school, you are taught to be loved, from home, from your mother, and from her growing you up from a newborn, and then until you start nursery and preschool. Because once you go into nursery and preschool, you're just basically going into a routine, and you're not taught love. You're not taught how you should be. You're not taught how the affection is going to affect you, or how you should deal with it, or what affection is. All we're taught in school and education sectors is how to be how people want us to be, not how to be with ourselves, or how to be how we want to be, and how to love ourselves.
Yeah.
And and I think that this should be actually put into place, because I think self-love actually plays a big part in everything that we do.
Well, that's true.
Because if you see like a lot of people that do have a very focused mindset, and they know exactly where they're going, is because they've actually found themselves, and they've found to love themselves to a point where they don't need to harm anybody. They don't want anything from anybody. They just want to feel peace within themselves and to bring harmony and love within the society. And I think that actually helps them to manifest within themselves as well. Because I believe that if you do give out a good energy, you will receive a good energy back.
It's all about loving yourself, but as I said,
but the thing is, this is what I'm saying, Bless, is that I know what you're going to say now, because you're going to say that it's really hard for people to do that because they haven't been taught.
Nope, that's not what I was going to say.
Okay, I thought I'd psych you there.
I'm gonna go back to what I said before. I'm gonna go back to that. What I said before.
May I just say, right? We've got our hosts coming from America as well, so I'm gonna give you a few more minutes on this.
No, it's all right. It's cool. This is important, right? What I said before, is that we are love and light. This is my belief. We are created. We live in this vessel. This is our body is a house that we live in. We are truly love and light. So when a person is angry and depressed and don't like themselves or think that they can't love themselves, you are that. You've just strayed away from it through circumstances in life. But your true essence is love. So don't say you can't love yourself. You can, because that's what you are originally. Just takes time to get back to what you really are.
Or it takes time to recognize that.
Yeah, to recognize that. And once you do recognize that and start loving yourself, now you can love others and you become a magnet and you start attracting what you are.
Exactly.
If you're a junkie, you're going to attract a junkie. If you're love, you're going to attract love. Yeah? And there's my final question. Where's my final question? This is not being a religious question. It's just the point. After all what you've been through and you experience, can you say, where is God in all of this, what you've been through?
Yes. So, do you want an honest answer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
My life is grounded on in love, in compassion, in joy, and in equanimity. My life is also grounded, from being brought up an Irish Catholic, in that I don't see a God.
Yeah.
I see causes and conditions. I have no recollection or desire for past lives. I have no recollection, no desire for future lives. It's not consolation I want. My only life is this life. There's no second chances. My life is not a rehearsal for something else. If I'm not going to be happy here tonight talking to you, then I'm never going to be happy.
Does
that make sense? So I can see that people gain solace and they have some consolation through an idea of a god, or in some cases even different gods, and a bit like AA. If that works for people, that's none of my business, as long as it doesn't harm anyone. But from my own point of view, at this point in my life, at 64 years old, having definitely gone through a spiritual journey and looked towards the religious side of Buddhism rather than the practical and pragmatic secular side, looking through the spiritual side of Christianity, they serve their purpose on my journey, but they're not where I am now. It's not to say that I might change tomorrow.
Yeah, but that's religion, though. I'm not talking. That's religion. When people get caught up in religion, that's different to spirituality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a difference there. Yeah.
But I don't. In Buddhism, there are sort of gods and angels and devas and things. But there's no creator God.
I think that's an argument. I think that's an argument with your own belief. I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, what you're believing in, what you believe in, Vince, is different to what I believe in, because that's where you're saying, "Oh, do you understand?" No, I don't understand, because that's what you believe in. Whereas I believe in something totally different. Like you said, that's fine. And Bless is saying, I personally do believe my religion is my spirituality. Yeah. And that gives me the comfort that I need, and that's the reason why I practice my religion, and that makes me feel really comfortable. Whereas in your case, it's not like that.
Yeah, everybody's different. It doesn't matter.
That's fine. As long as you're happy.
Yeah, everybody's
different.
Can
I just say something? Talking about religion and coming to this recovery situation, is that say for instance, me and Asghar, we believe in Islam, and in Islam, you have it's basically our prayer is actually a part of form of meditation. It is. It's actually a form of very deep meditation that we actually, actually do. But we do it, a completely different way. But it is a part of a meditation to help us spiritually have a mind and have a stronger mindset. Yeah. So that is also what Vince is saying about what he believes in is also part of our religion as well.
Very much so. The Prophet Muhammad said that there's a morsel of flesh, and when this morsel of flesh is fit and well, then the body is fit and well. Yeah. And when this morsel of flesh is unwell, then the body is unwell. And this morsel of flesh is the heart. So that's where my practice lies. That's where my practice comes from the heart, and that's where all true religions come from, the heart.
Exactly.
but I don't have to be religious. I don't have to believe
do that,
in God.
practice it. Yeah, you have your own. Yeah.
From the heart.
Yeah,
Oh.
I cool.
It's like,
I
you know,
finished.
as you're saying, like in regards to the 12-step
Finish.
program, and you know what you went through through the monarch monastery in Thailand, in regards to forgiveness. And Islam, they say to repent. They tell you to repent, and you know, to prayer, a form of meditation. So that is also incorporated within that, but obviously on a different scale.
Okay. Anyway, it's still religion,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of what, it's still religion. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that, but what I'm trying
I'm
to say
not fighting
is
against
that,
it. I'm not fighting against it. All I'm just saying is that the question was not a religious question. It was a spiritual question. So it
You know,
wasn't connected to religion. That question, when I say God, I don't mean like a man sitting on a throne. I mean just the creation itself and the universe and everything.
But you see, that's the way you're seeing it, Bless.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
everybody's got their own
it's
point of view.
different.
He's got his own point of view, which is right for him, and we all got our own point of view,
Yes, exactly.
which is still our concept of God.
absolutely.
Okay.
All right, we're done. I'm done now. That's it.
I have my other co-host coming in from America, so we have to call it a day with Vince. We loved having you on here.
we did indeed.
So, yeah, I think Bless can have another session with you.
It's been good fun. It's been a pleasure. Thank you ever so much. It's been very pleasant and agreeable talking to all of you. And thank you for pressing me on and making me answer those difficult questions.
Yeah, thank you. You got to buy a comb tomorrow, yeah?
So,
All right, nice
thank you
talking
very
to you, Vince. Very interesting. Nice talking to you. Have a nice day, bro.
Thank you very much.
Thank
See
you very
later.
much.
Thank you
Alright,
so
cool.
much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.
Bye for now.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.
Wait.
Right, let me just. You'll have to click. You have to just hold on. I'll do it.